Let me tell you something that deeply concerns me. Last week, a 67-year-old woman came into my practice, elegant, intelligent, with an orderly life, and she said something that left me completely frozen. "Dr. Rizzo, I have fallen in love and I feel like I'm losing control of my life." And you know what I discovered in that moment? That falling in love after the age of 60 is no longer the same. And I'm not talking about romance or fairy tales. I'm talking about real dangers that hardly anyone dares to speak about. Because you see, when you have built a life at this age, with fixed routines and hard-won independence, love can become an emotional tsunami that sweeps everything away. And here comes the truly disturbing part. Most people over 60 keep making the same fatal mistakes. Mistakes that cost them their autonomy, their inner peace, and in the worst case, even their fortune. But before I continue, if this topic seems important to you, give this video a like now. And if you want to receive more content that can protect you in this phase of life and help you make better decisions, subscribe to the channel. This kind of information can make an enormous difference not only for you, but also for someone you love. Make sure to stay tuned because what I will reveal today could save you from one of the most painful experiences you can have at this age. And no, I am not exaggerating. Let's go straight to the core. The first deadly danger of love after 60 has a very specific name: confusing loneliness with love. And listen to me carefully now, because this is crucial. When you reach 60, it is very likely that you have experienced significant losses. Perhaps you are widowed, perhaps you divorced after decades of marriage, or your children have long since moved out, built their own families, and suddenly your home feels too big and too quiet. This loneliness, this feeling of emptiness, is like an open wound. And when someone appears who gives you attention, who listens to you, who makes you visible again, then your brain does something extremely dangerous. It labels that feeling of relief as love, but it isn't. Let me be brutally honest. In over 30 years of clinical experience, I have seen wonderful, intelligent people with successful careers plunge into catastrophic relationships simply because they could not distinguish between the need for company and real love. And do you know what is the most frightening part of it? That this confusion after 60 has far more serious consequences than at 20 or 30. Why? Because time feels different at this age. You feel an existential urgency. I have no time to lose, you tell yourself. This could be my last chance at happiness. And precisely this feeling makes you skip essential steps. It makes you ignore obvious warning signs. It pushes you into an emotional pace that is far too fast. I have seen people move in together after less than 3 months, merge their finances after 6 months, and after a year sit completely devastated in front of me, wondering how they ended up in that situation. Because here comes the uncomfortable truth no one wants to hear. Loneliness is healed through human connection. Not necessarily through romance. Your need for closeness can be fulfilled through deep friendships, group activities, community projects, or rediscovering forgotten passions. But when you make another person the only antidote to your loneliness, you are not building a relationship out of love, but out of dependency. And emotional dependency after 60 is particularly toxic because it disguises itself as complete openness of the heart, as the feeling of finally having found a soulmate, as the desire to make the most of the time you have left. But wait, it gets even darker. Let's talk about the second danger, the pressure of time that distorts your judgment. When you are 25 and a relationship fails, you think, I have my whole life ahead of me. You recover, learn from it, and move on. But after 60, your mind whispers something completely different. This is your last chance. If you miss it, you will die alone. This thought, this primitive fear of eternal loneliness, is one of the most powerful emotional manipulation tools that exist. And I want you to understand something fundamental. This fear is not irrational, it is deeply human. The idea of being without companionship in old age is truly frightening for most people. But here is where the problem begins. Decisions made out of fear always end badly. Let me tell you about Roberto, 64 years old, a retired engineer, widowed for 3 years, two adult children who live in other cities, Roberto met Patricia at a dance event. She, 58, divorced, charming, open, everything he had been missing in his grey, predictable life. After 2 weeks, they saw each other every day. After a month, she practically lived with him. After 3 months, he proposed to her. His children warned him, "Take it slower, you hardly know her." But do you know what Roberto answered? "You are young, you have time. I don't. I will not waste the rest of my life waiting for the perfect moment." 6 months later, already married, Roberto discovered that Patricia had significant debts she had hidden and that she expected him to pay them. Because that's what spouses do. Her charming, extroverted nature also meant constant outings with friends, financed from his account. But the worst part wasn't the debts. The worst part was the emotional blackmail Roberto faced whenever he tried to set boundaries. "You don't love me anymore. You regret marrying me. Maybe I should leave and let you be alone again, just like before." And that is the perfect trap. Roberto, in a panic at the thought of being alone again, kept giving in. He lost his inner peace, his autonomy, his relationship with his children, and a large part of his fortune, all because he made decisions from a feeling of now or never. But here comes something that hardly anyone tells you. This time, pressure is an illusion. Yes, you heard correctly, an illusion. The idea that after 60 time is running out to find love is a mental construct reinforced by fear. The statistical reality looks very different. More and more people find meaningful relationships in later stages of life. With digital platforms and longer life expectancy, the opportunities for connection are greater than ever before. But when you convince yourself that this is your last chance, your brain switches into scarcity mode. And in scarcity mode, you accept the unacceptable. You tolerate the intolerable. You ignore the obvious. Because in a mind distorted by fear, any company seems better than none. And you know what? That is wrong. A dangerous lie, a bad relationship, after 60 not only makes you unhappy, it can actually make you ill. The chronic stress of a toxic relationship weakens the immune system, increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, and harms mental health. Being alone is infinitely better than being poorly accompanied, especially after 60, but it goes further. There is a third danger, even more insidious. We need to talk about something many consider taboo, but which is absolutely crucial: money and wealth in late-life relationships. And before you think, how materialistic, let me be clear. This is not about being calculating or distrustful. It is about protecting yourself. Because here is the brutal reality. After 60, you most likely have something to protect. Perhaps a paid-off house after decades of hard work, your retirement savings, investments, wealth you want to leave to your children. And unfortunately, there are people who deliberately seek relationships with older adults for financial reasons. Yes, it is that harsh. I am not claiming that every person who approaches you after 60 has dark intentions. Most are honest, but emotional and financial predators exist. And after 60, you are an especially attractive target. Why? First, because you probably have resources. Second, because loneliness makes you more emotionally vulnerable. And third, because your generation is often more trusting, less suspicious than younger generations who grew up in the digital age. Let me tell you about Mercedes. 66 years old, retired university professor, decent pension, her own house in a good area. She met Javier in a cafe. Hey, 62, polite, attentive, educated. He sent her flowers, called her daily, recited poems. Mercedes was thrilled. After years of loneliness, she had finally found someone who appreciated her. After 4 months of dating, Javier told her he was having temporary financial difficulties. His company had gone bankrupt, he had debts, but he would soon sort it all out because a project was almost completed. Mercedes, in love, lent him money. It's only temporary, she told herself. He would do the same for me. 2 months later, Javier needed more money to finally complete the project. Mercedes took out a mortgage on her house, and you can imagine the ending. Javier disappeared with the money, Mercedes lost her house, At 66, she had to move into a small apartment, start working again, and face the reproaches of her children, who had warned her again and again. And the worst part was not even the financial loss. The worst part was the loss of her self-confidence. "How could I have been so stupid?" she said during the session. "I am an educated, intelligent woman. How could I let myself be deceived like that?" But Mercedes was not stupid. Mercedes was human. Love, especially when mixed with loneliness and longing, clouds judgment. It makes you want to believe, it makes you overlook contradictions, it makes you justify questionable behavior. And here is the crucial point. Predators know exactly how to detect emotional vulnerabilities. They know exactly what to say, how to make someone who felt invisible for a long time feel special again, how to create artificially accelerated intimacy, how to ask for small favors that slowly turn into exploitation. And this is not only about direct money. Manipulation can look much more subtle. Maybe he asks you to transfer a property into his name to simplify things. Maybe he tries to convince you to change your will, to isolate you from your family and friends because they don't understand your love. Maybe he moves into your house without contributing financially. Maybe he uses your credit cards or wants you to co-sign his debts. And you know what the most perverse thing is? These demands usually come wrapped in the language of love. "If you really loved me, I thought we were a team. Don't you trust me?" So what to do? Fall into paranoia? Distrust everyone? No. But a healthy level of self-protection is essential. Never mix financial commitments before you truly know someone. And by truly, I mean at least 1 year of a stable relationship. Talk to your children or people you trust before making financial decisions involving your partner. Keep separate accounts, always. Protect your assets legally, and if you want to marry or live together, consider a prenuptial agreement. It doesn't sound romantic, but it is wise, because here is the truth. Real love respects your autonomy and your financial security. If someone applies pressure, emotionally manipulates you, or makes you feel guilty because you want to protect your wealth, then that person does not love you. They are using you. But there is another danger that hardly anyone talks about, and it is crucial: the incompatibility of two fully lived life stories. This is something that hardly matters at 20, but at 60, it can become monumental. At that age, both people bring decades of experiences, wounds, habits, and worldviews. You are no longer blank pages with it all. You are complete books, filled with intense chapters, some beautiful, some painful, but all shaping the person you are today. And when two complete books try to merge into one, conflict is almost inevitable. Remember this: at 60, you have fixed routines. You get up at a certain time, always eat the same breakfast, have your own spaces and rituals. You have adult children who are part of your life, perhaps grandchildren you see on weekends. You have friendships that have existed for decades with their own dynamics. You have deeply rooted political, moral, or religious beliefs. You have your own way of handling money, of arranging your home, of spending your vacations. And now someone new enters this carefully ordered system. It is a tremendous challenge, not because love would be impossible, but because adjusting two complete worlds of life is much more difficult than for two young people who are just starting out. It requires patience, self-reflection, flexibility, and above all, the ability to let go of old patterns without losing yourself. What hardly matters at 20 can become a huge obstacle at 60. At this age, both bring decades of experiences, wounds, habits, and worldviews. One is no longer a blank page. One is an entire book, filled with intense chapters, some beautiful, some painful, but all shaping the person one has become. And when two complete books try to merge into one, conflicts are almost inevitable. Imagine this: at 60, one has fixed routines. One gets up at the same time, eats the same breakfast, has familiar spaces and rituals. One has adult children who belong to one's life, perhaps grandchildren one sees on weekends, friendships that have lasted for decades. Deeply rooted political, religious, and moral convictions. A particular way of handling money, arranging the home or spending vacations. And then someone enters this solidly built life with their own habits, their own children, their own friends, their own beliefs, their own way of living. The clash can be intense. An example of this is Eduardo and Sylvia. He, 68, widowed. She, 65, divorced. They met in a book club, fell in love, and decided to move in together. At first, everything was enchanting, but after 3 months, the friction began. Eduardo ate dinner early, watched the news at 6:30, and was in bed by 9. Sylvia ate at 9, stayed awake until midnight, and watched series. Eduardo was tidy and meticulous. Sylvia was more relaxed and left many things lying around. But the real conflicts were deeper. Eduardo's son visited him every Sunday with the grandchildren. For him, it was sacred. Sylvia, on the other hand, felt that they never had time alone because family was always around. Sylvia met her friends twice a week, which Eduardo perceived as rejection. He thought that as a couple, they should spend more time together. And then came the most sensitive point. He was conservative, she progressive. At first they avoided the subject, but soon every conversation became a minefield. What happened? Both tried to change the other. Eduardo wanted Sylvia to adopt his routines. Sylvia wanted Eduardo to be more flexible, more spontaneous, but neither gave in because both thought, at my age, I won't change anymore. And this is the existential problem of love after 60. One would need flexibility precisely in the phase of life in which one has the least of it. Not out of stubbornness, but because the brain at this age has solidified patterns. Identity is stable, habits are deeply rooted, changes require conscious, long-term effort, something many no longer want or are able to invest. Then the quiet struggle begins. Resentment grows. Comparisons with the earlier, solitary life arise. And what began as love turns into a life together full of tension and small daily wounds. I have seen couples who became literally ill because of this. Anxiety, insomnia, digestive problems. The stress of trying to unite two complete lives without real tools or willingness is enormous. And here comes something hardly anyone says openly. You don't have to move in together. Yes, you heard correctly. In the 21st century, one can have a deep, stable and meaningful relationship after 60 without living under the same roof. There is even a name for it. Living apart together. Living separately, but emotionally connected. Both keep their space, their autonomy, their routines, they meet regularly, share what matters, but at the end of the day, each returns to their own retreat. And you know what? For many people over 60, this form is perfect. It preserves the magic, reduces conflict, and respects individuality. Society likes to claim that true love means moving in together. That physical separation is a lack of commitment. That is wrong. It is just an outdated cultural pressure. True connection does not show itself by sharing a roof, but by respecting each other, supporting each other, and being emotionally present. But there is an even more sensitive area, and it belongs to the greatest risks of love after 60, sexuality later in life, and how it can become an emotionally dangerous anchor. We must speak honestly about something society prefers to suppress. People over 60 remain sexual beings. They still long for closeness. They still feel physical attraction. The desire does not disappear with age. It only changes its form. But if one has gone years, sometimes decades, without physical contact, returning to intimacy can be overwhelmingly strong. And this is where one of the greatest dangers lurks. One can confuse the intensity of a physical connection with true love. Let me explain. If one has been alone for years, if the last intimate experience lies so far behind that it feels almost foreign, and suddenly someone touches you again, someone who looks at you with desire, who makes you feel attractive, then the brain is flooded. Oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins, the chemical cocktail of bonding, and this chemical wave can make one believe they have found the love of their life. In truth, it is often nothing more than the deep relief of a basic human need that has been dormant for a long time. I have heard countless times, Dr. Rizzo, I have never felt anything like this. It must be true love. And my answer is usually, how do you know it is love and not simply intimacy after a long emotional drought? This distinction is crucial, because when you make important decisions, moving in together, getting married, sharing assets, based solely on the power of a physical connection, you are building on sand. Sexuality is something wonderful, necessary, deeply human. But it is not enough. And after 60, the confusion between desire and love can lead you to attach yourself to people who are emotionally or morally completely unsuitable. There is also another aspect that hardly anyone speaks about openly, the pressure to perform. Yes, after 60 bodies change completely naturally, yet many suddenly feel the obligation to function, to disappoint no one, to prove that they are still desirable. This pressure leads people to tolerate behaviors they would never have accepted before. I have seen women who accept a lack of respect simply because they say, "At least I feel desired again," and men who stay in clearly destructive relationships because they think, "She makes me feel young again." Physical closeness can become a golden trap, pleasant, intoxicating, but dangerously binding, a trap that keeps you tied to relationships that offer little emotionally. But here lies a liberating truth. You deserve a relationship in which everything is aligned: respect, communication, emotional support, compatibility, and yes, also physical joy. You do not have to choose between love and desire. You do not have to settle for, "At least someone touches me." You deserve a connection that is complete, honest, and balanced. Because if you settle for less, you not only deprive yourself of a healthy relationship, you also close off the possibility of a love that lifts you up instead of hollowing you out. This pressure can lead you to tolerate behaviors you would never have accepted before, simply out of fear of losing the physical affirmation you have lacked. For so long I have seen women endure emotional disrespect just because they say, "At least I feel desired again," and men who stay in clearly destructive relationships because this closeness gives them the feeling of being young again. Physical intimacy can become a golden but dangerously addictive trap, pleasant, comforting, yet binding in a way that keeps you in relationships that do not nourish you emotionally. And this is where a liberating truth lies. You deserve a relationship in which everything fits, in which respect, communication, emotional support, true compatibility, and yes, physical pleasure come together. You do not have to choose between love and desire. You do not have to settle for, "At least someone touches me." You deserve a complete, honest, and balanced connection. Because if you accept less, you rob yourself not only of the chance for a healthy relationship, you also close the door to a love that strengthens you instead of exhausting you. But there is one final danger, perhaps the most painful of all. The sixth and final point: the devastating impact that a poorly chosen relationship can have on your family and your emotional legacy. After 60, you are no longer just yourself. You are part of an entire network of relationships: children, grandchildren, siblings, friends, people who have accompanied you your whole life. And when you bring a new partner into this network, especially too quickly or thoughtlessly, the consequences can be enormous. I have seen entire families break apart because of poorly managed late-life relationships. Children cut off contact because they feel that a stranger is intruding and manipulating their parent. Grandchildren lose their connection to their grandparents. Inheritances dissipate. Family traditions fall apart because the new partner sets new rules. And the most painful part, many of these breaks are irreversible. Let me tell you about Carlos, 69 years old, father of 3 children, grandfather of 5, widowed for 4 years. He met Lucia and fell passionately in love. When his children asked him to take things slowly, he accused them of selfishness. Lucia fueled this conflict skillfully. "Your children only want your money. I am the only one who truly loves you." Blinded by infatuation, Carlos distanced himself from his family. He changed his will, cancelled family gatherings, and gradually lost everything that had supported him. 3 years later, the relationship ended abruptly. Lucia disappeared and took a significant part of his assets with her. When Carlos tried to reconcile with his children, it was too late. The wounds were deep. Only one of his children returned. The other two never forgave him. Carlos died 2 years later. Surrounded by silence, that is the real price of impulsive decisions after 60. It is not just about your happiness, it is about the emotional legacy of your entire life. Think about it. You have built relationships for decades. You were there for birthdays, graduations, weddings. You held your grandchildren in your arms, created memories that are part of your life story, and all of that can fall apart in a few months because of a wrong relationship. Yes, it can happen.
And there is one thing you must understand. Your adult children have the right to worry, not because they want to control you, but because they love you, because they see warning signs you overlook in the intoxication of infatuation.
I have often heard, "My children don't want me to be happy." In most cases, that is not true. They do not want you to be hurt, manipulated, or exploited. They do not want to watch someone who has only recently entered your life destroy everything you have built together over half a century. That does not mean that your children should decide for you. Your autonomy is sacred. But it does mean that you should listen to them. Listen without judgment. Weigh things without closing yourself off. Sometimes emotional distance gives a clarity you yourself cannot have. Let me show you the other side, what a healthy story looks like. Maria, 65, met Roberto. Her children were skeptical at first, but she listened to them. She introduced Roberto gently, without rushed changes. She kept her traditions, her gatherings, her separate finances. Roberto respected that. He did not push, did not isolate, did not divide. Over time, he earned everyone's trust. 2 years later, Maria's family accepted him because they saw that his love enriched her life rather than diminished it. That is the key. Balance. You can have a new relationship and at the same time preserve your family ties. It is not a choice between one or the other, but if your new partner forces you to choose, distances you from your loved ones, or turns you against them, then that is a gigantic warning sign. True love does not separate. True love connects. It respects that your family is a part of you. Anyone who demands that you cut off your story is not looking for love, but control. Isolation is always the first step toward abuse. And I want to leave you with this thought. Your legacy is not measured in money, not in possessions. Your legacy lies in the memories you leave behind, in the relationships you nurture, in the way your family will one day remember you. How do you want to be remembered? As someone who spent their final years in love and respect, or as someone who lost everything because of a relationship that was never worth it? The choice is yours. What you choose today will be the story told about you tomorrow. And what is the conclusion? That one should no longer fall in love after 60? That one must resign oneself to loneliness? Not at all. Love after 60 can be beautiful, deep, and meaningful, often even more mature and fulfilling than any love before. Many tell me that the love they found in this stage of life was the most authentic, calm, and truthful love they ever experienced. And that makes sense. At this age, you know your boundaries, you know what you want and what you do not. You no longer waste time on games or toxic relationships. You seek real companionship, conversations with depth, someone with whom you can share the late sunsets of life. All of that is beautiful, all of that is valuable, but it requires awareness, slowness, and respect for your own life and your own roots. Do not throw yourself into it. Do not give in to the pressure of now or never. Do not confuse loneliness with love. Do not sacrifice your autonomy, your wealth, or your family on the altar of being in love. Because after all these years with older people, I have learned one thing. Temporary loneliness is 1,000 times better than permanent bad company. Being alone is not the worst scenario. The worst scenario is being with someone who manipulates you, isolates you, controls you, or takes something from you. That is the true nightmare, because the love you truly deserve after 6 decades of life is a love that respects, that is patient, that protects, and that enriches your life, not diminishes it. If someone truly loves you, they will wait until you feel safe. They will respect your pace, appreciate what you have built, and fit into your life without tearing down your world. They will want to meet your family and understand that there is a long story before them. They will never make you choose between your past and your future. And if they are not willing to do that, they do not love you. Then they simply need you. Or worse, they are using you. Ask yourself, does this new relationship give you more freedom or make you tighter, smaller, more controlled? Does it bring you closer to your family or does it tear you away from them? Does it respect your independence or constantly question it? Does this person celebrate your life's achievements or try to control them? The answers to these questions tell you everything you need to know. So yes, fall in love after 60, dare to allow closeness again. Open your heart. Give yourself another chance at love because you deserve it. But do not forget the final great danger, the destructive impact a poorly chosen relationship can have on your family and your life's work. After 60, you are part of an emotional web. Children, grandchildren, siblings, friends who have accompanied you for decades. And if you bring a new person into this network too quickly, the consequences can be far-reaching. I have seen families literally break apart because of late-life relationships. Children who cut off contact because they sense that a stranger is manipulating grandchildren who lose their connection. Inheritances that dissolve. Family traditions that disappear because the new partner wants to set different rules. That is why it is crucial that every new love enters your life slowly, mindfully, and with respect for everything you have already built. People who truly love you do not demand that you sever the bonds that nourish you and carry you through life. On the contrary, they strive to become part of that whole, to understand your relationships, your habits, and your priorities. True love never comes like a storm that destroys everything, but like a light that gently blends into your existing world. The truth is simple. After the age of 60, your love no longer belongs to you alone. It touches all those who are part of your story. That is why you carry a double responsibility. On one hand, you must stand up for yourself, for your values and boundaries, and on the other hand, protect the emotional space in which your family has lived for decades. Love must be a bridge, not a knife. It must be a gain, not a source of conflict. Every person who enters your life must understand this, respect it, and confirm it through actions, not just words. In the end, you should remember this. True love in later life is not the one that suddenly appears and blinds you with big promises, but the one that calms you, respects you, and enriches you. The one that takes nothing from you, but gives you something. The one that does not separate, but connects. If a person can give you peace, safety, and joy without destroying what makes you who you are, then they are worth your time, your tenderness, and your heart. And only then does it become clear that love after 60 is not only possible, it can be the most mature, gentle, and wise form of love you have ever experienced.